Okay, today we're looking at Rome. We'll start that civilization off, and what we're going to be looking for right now is today we are going to be looking at the questions. Okay, I want you to write simple questions for your notes today, or write questions. Try to write more than one question per slide, or at least one question per slide, and we'll see how that goes. Also, try to write questions that require explanations. Okay. Simple questions are questions that might address height, weight, size, things that can be answered with a single sentence. So try to push yourself beyond that. Okay, now this is Rome about 710 BCE. 710 BCE is about the time that Romulus and Remus would have founded Rome. But when you look at it, you can already see that Rome is actually a lot bigger than just being started off brand new. And so here you can see city walls that go around the city of Rome. Rome is noted to be a city that was built on 7 hills, and this will hopefully help you orient yourself to this map. This island is called Tiber Island. That's going to be in a lot of the photos I show today. Now, this is a model that somebody had built about ancient Rome. There's another model that we'll be looking at later on today, later on the slideshow, that was commissioned by Benito Mussolini. He was a dictator of Rome, El Duce, during World War II, and he had a model built of Imperial Rome that we'll see. Okay, but this is Rome right about 700 BCE. Now, it's probably about a mile or so from this wall to that wall. It might be several miles, 2 or 3 miles from here, all the way up to there where the other wall is. But the wall does come down and around and forms this city. Now, they do make use of their natural defenses. The hills make it much more difficult to attack because now all I have to do is guard the low valleys where the wall is, and that could protect you fairly well. It also makes the use of the Tiber River, because right here, this used to be a ford, where a shallow spot in the river that you could cross. And it's the only spot on the river that you can cross for several miles. Rome is about 10 to 15 miles upstream from the port of Ostia, and downstream goes this direction toward us, where we are right now. These are the 7 hills. So we have Kaplan Hill, and on Kaplan Hill we have the Temple of Jupiter. Palatine Hill, that is where the palaces would be located later on. Caelian Hill, Esquiline Hill, Viminal Hill are hills where are heavily populated nowadays with different people out there. Caelian Hill may not be so much, because that is some of the end of the ruins. In fact, this central valley right through here is a lot of the Roman ruins, and so is Palatine Hill. It has not been rebuilt. Aventine Hill, that is a hill noted for the poor people that lived in Rome. The Aventine was the common area. Now, Colonel Hill up here, that hill is a hill that is kind of interesting because it gets removed later on. In fact, a lot of these hills are shaped by the people as they live in Rome. Okay. Now, here's a little bit different view. Again, you can see the island up there, the Tiber Island. You can see the ford where the bridge is. You can see Palatine Hill and Aventine Hill. I can identify both of those. Between that is a different one. You can also see the Temple of Jupiter. Okay. Circus Maximus is that racetrack between the Palatine and Aventine. The big circle, circus, I mean circle, and the Maximus is the big one. Okay. Now, the pond between Esquiline Hill and Caelian Hill, that is where they will build the Colosseum later on. In fact, the Romans spent quite a bit of time draining this area, getting the swamp out. They filled a lot of this area in as well, I am assuming, because in this area they built what was called, or at this stage, they were building what was called the Cloaca Maxima. Cloaca Maxima is the big sewer. And it is one of the key pieces that made Rome a big city. Another piece that you see right here is the Forum between these hills, in the center of all those hills. The Forum is the center of town. It is where they would have their main temples, their shops. Where they would meet to discuss things. In Greece, it would be called the Agora, kind of the central marketplace, but it's the downtown area of Rome. Now, the Capitoline Hill. Kaplan Hills is actually where the capital of Italy is now located. It's up here on this end of the hill. But here is the Temple of Jupiter. And what I want you to look at is the Tarpon Rock. Okay. So this is what the Kaplan Hill looks back in 710 BCE or so. And you can see the Temple of Jupiter right there. This is the Tarpon Rock. Now, the Tarpon Rock is the rock of punishment. If you did a crime in ancient Rome, a lot of times it would require you to be thrown from the top of the Tarpon Rock. It doesn't look like a very pleasant way to meet your end, but it is probably pretty effective. The worst crime in Rome was killing your parents or killing your dad specifically. Your dad was sacred in a lot of ways. It was a patriarchal system, which meant your dad could do anything to you, but you could not do anything to your dad. A father could kill you and not face any punishment. But if you killed your father, your punishment would be to be sewn into a sack with a monkey, a dog, a rooster, and a snake, I believe. Then they'd throw you in the Tiber River. And that would make all these animals fight and scratch and bite as you all drowned in the river. The Tiber River is a notoriously dirty river, and we'll talk about that later on too, but it's a fascinating place. Now we can see the Tarpon Rock in the Forum. And so the Forum is that center of downtown, and you can see that the punishment area is right at the end of the Forum, where you can look up and see these people getting tossed off if you wanted to. It would be kind of strange to do that. Okay, now this is from about 330 CE, so in the Common Era, so about 1700 years ago. Just take a minute, take a look at it, and see if you can orient yourself. Do you see where the Circus Maximus is? Can you see the Tiber Island? Can you see the Temple of Jupiter and the Tarpon Rock? Okay, those things are still there. Now, you've noticed Rome has grown quite a bit. When we look at later on in this presentation, we'll see a graph of the population, how much it exploded in that 1,000-year time frame, or 800 years or so. Now, the Forum is still right there, Aventine Hill's dead center, and it is a big palatial hill for people to live in. There's the Tarpon Rock and the Temple of Jupiter just above it. The Colosseum was built about 79 CE, so about 200. This in this picture would be about 200 years old. This is part of the model that Mussolini had built. The model is actually 55 feet by 55 feet. It's 250th scale, and it was constructed over a period of about 35 years by archaeologists. They did a lot of research to find out where these things were. What is kind of ironic is that Mussolini, when he was having this commissioned, he actually destroyed quite a bit of the artifacts as well, because right next to the Temple of Jupiter, right in this area, he built the national capital of Italy. A lot of Italians call it the wedding cake. Okay. Now, a couple of things. The aqueducts. Okay. One thing that made Rome livable. Okay. The Cloaca Maxima, the big sewer, it made Rome very livable, because if you live in a city of 1 million people, your waste has to go somewhere. Okay. It's good to have toilets. Now, the aqueducts, down at the bottom says Aqueduct, one of 11 that served Rome with water. The aqueduct was would pipe water in from the mountains around Rome. I think the longest one was about 50 miles long, and it would drop fairly regularly, about 4 inches for every 100 feet or so, as it would pipe water into your neighborhood. Now, the rich people might have their own running water, so about a third of the city had its own running water, but the neighborhoods would have running water as well. And so even if you're poor, you'd have running water in the street, not in your house. And so you go down there and take water, use water. But these aqueducts looks like a wall, but it's actually a water system that funnels through the city. Now, up next to the Colosseum, we see the Colossus of Nero. And the Colossus of Nero is actually where the Colosseum gets its name, because in Latin, Colosseum means beside the Colossus. So the Colossus of Nero was about 99 to 121 feet tall. We have different sources that give us different heights of it. But the Statue of Liberty, and I should just capitalize that, Statue of Liberty from heel to head is about 111 feet. And so the Colossus of Nero is roughly the same size as the Statue of Liberty. And when you look at the Colossus of Nero, it looks kind of tiny in this map or on this picture. Now let that sink in a little bit, because Rome was a very modern city. It had apartment buildings that would be 7 or 8 stories tall. It had very many fine public buildings, and we'll see some of them. In fact, you can see some of them right now just by looking around the map of Rome. The Forum was that center area where people would come through. And I will show you some other highlights. The open areas, the courtyards are places and nowadays are called piazzas in Italy or in Italian, and that is a place where you can go at times. But some of these open squares are part of other forums or public buildings where you can go see. Now, this half circle over here, that is a theater, okay? And the Colosseum is an amphitheater where you take two halves of the theater and you put it together, both in theater. Both sides of the theater come together to form that oval. And I'll show you some other things coming up here too. Okay, now this is a slightly different orientation. Take a second to look around and see if you can see where the island on the Tiber is. The Temple of Jupiter is marked, and so is the Forum, so that might help you too. The Tarpon Rock is just going to be this side of the Temple of Jupiter. The Colosseum is going to be opposite the Temple of Jupiter down the Forum. Let's see. There's a couple things I want you to notice here. There, the Pantheon. Okay, the Pantheon was the largest freestanding concrete dome in the world until about 1970-ish or so. It's about 150 feet across, 150 feet tall. It is a remarkable building. It was built by Hadrian. He was one of the emperors at that time. In fact, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see Hadrian's tomb. It's known as the Castello Sant'Angelo. And that bridge that goes to Castello Sant'Angelo is still standing. I think it was built right about this time frame. I'd have to look that up again. But the Pantheon is dedicated to all Pan and Theo, all the gods. It currently functions as a Christian church, and so people can go in there. But the hole in the top of the building, you can see a dark circle there, that is 30 feet across. It is called the Oculus, and it makes the building just remarkable to look at. Another thing I want you to notice is right there, Trajan's Column. It's 125 feet tall. It is the same height as the Colonel Hill that was removed to build Trajan's Forum. Now, Trajan's Forum is this big empty spot here, and there is all part of Trajan's Forum. This semicircle back here, half circle, is Trajan's Market, and they built that in there to hold the hill back. Okay, so they built this big 7-story market into the hillside, and it's still standing. If you ever go to Rome, you'll see this empty square here with broken colonnades around. Mussolini, he put a big road right through this area to go from near the Colosseum up north, right next to the Capitol building, which is very sad. I am glad that he preserved some of these sites, at least in model form. Now, here are the populations of Rome. If you look at about 700 BCE, probably about 40,000 people live there, so about the size of Pullman. But as it grew, okay, by the time it became an empire, it was almost 1.4 million people. When Rome split into two, we had the eastern half and the western half. Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople. Here it's called Istanbul. But then the population of Rome dropped. And then Rome was sacked by some barbarians. The Goths came down and robbed Rome took a lot of things from the Romans. Then we have the Dark Ages. Very few people lived there. The way that they sacked Rome was they took down the aqueducts. Removing the aqueducts made the city unlivable because your toilets didn't flush anymore. And so it became a sick, disgusting place to live. But you can see that rapid decline in population. It isn't until modern times that Rome actually becomes a big city again. Okay, during the presentation, you're supposed to write some questions. Now is the time to share your questions with the class. Now, also, can we answer the questions with a sentence? Simple questions are good. You need to have simple questions to identify your topic, to kind of set the borders of what your topic is about. But then you also need to ask some deeper questions, things that will require research. And that's what we're going to be working on for the next few days. Is how do we establish research questions, and what kind of questions do we have about Rome? Okay. If you have any questions besides the ones I asked you to write, let me know. Take care.